I never thought I'd be telling this story. It's one of those memories that stays buried, hidden in the shadows of your mind, only creeping out when you least expect it. But the other night, I went to KFC for the first time in years, and the smell of fried chicken brought it all back. The fear, the confusion, the moment I almost disappeared. This happened nearly 20 years ago when I was just 8 years old. Back then, my family didn't go out to eat much, but KFC was special. Maybe it was because it wasn't just fast food. It was a meal. A big bucket of crispy chicken, mashed potatoes, buttery biscuits. It felt like a real family dinner. My dad was usually the one who picked it up, bringing it home while my mom set the table. But one Saturday night, for no particular reason, I decided to go with him. It was around 6:30 p.m., the kind of early evening where the sky is already dim and the cold air bites at your skin. It must have been fall or spring because I remember wearing a light jacket. The KFC was only about 10 minutes from our house, a small location at the edge of a shopping center. The neon red and white sign flickered slightly, buzzing softly against the hum of cars passing by on the road. Inside, the place was empty, not a single customer sitting down. There was just one man ahead of us in line, placing his order while my dad stood behind him. I got bored easily as a kid, and standing still wasn't my thing, so I wandered off, exploring the empty restaurant. That was the last time I ever felt safe in a KFC. I remember walking toward the back corner of the restaurant, near a secondary door that led to the parking lot. The glass on the door was streaked from past rain, reflecting the dim streetlights outside. As I stood there, looking out into the night, the main entrance chimed behind me. A man walked in. At first, I didn't really pay attention. He wasn't anything special. Average height, dark jacket, baseball cap pulled low over his forehead. He headed straight toward my dad, but I didn't hear what he said. Maybe I didn't care. I was more focused on what happened next. From the door near me, a woman stepped inside. She wasn't an employee. She wasn't a customer. She didn't belong there. I remember she smiled at me, wide, friendly, almost too friendly. "Hey there," she said, extending her hand toward me. I was a polite kid. My parents had always taught me to shake hands when someone introduces themselves, so I reached out and shook her hand. That's when I realized something was wrong. She didn't let go. Before I could react, she gripped my wrist tighter and took a step backward toward the door. I hesitated, confused. My brain hadn't caught up with what was happening yet. Then we were outside. I don't even remember taking a step, but suddenly the cold air hit my face, and the sounds of the street surrounded me. She kept her grip firm as she pulled me around the corner of the building. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I was just confused. "I just want to show you something really quick," she said, her voice still soft, like a mom talking to a child. That's when I saw the van. It was an old, beat-up thing, faded paint peeling from the sides, rust creeping along the bottom edges. The sliding door was already open. And then I saw him. The man who had walked in earlier, the one who had been talking to my dad, was now running toward us from the other side of the building. I felt hands on my waist as the woman lifted me up, shoving me toward the open van door. My mind finally caught up. I started to struggle. I remember kicking out, but I wasn't strong enough. I tried to yell, but the sound barely came out. That's when I heard a different sound, heavy footsteps pounding against the pavement. A shout tore through the air. "Hey, let him go!" I turned my head just in time to see my dad sprinting around the corner, his face twisted in pure rage. The woman in the van started screaming at the man. "Go! Go! Get in the van!" The man hesitated. His hands were on the steering wheel, but he didn't start the engine. "Let him out," the man said, his voice shaking. "What? Are you stupid? Go!" the woman shrieked. But my dad was already too close. He reached the van just as the woman threw open the door and shoved me out. I hit the pavement hard, my hands scraping against the rough ground. My dad grabbed me, pulling me against him as the van sped off, tires screeching. I still remember the way my dad pointed at the van, yelling. Something about no license plates. something about calling the cops. But I wasn't listening. I was staring at the empty space where the van had been. I almost disappeared. The next few hours were a blur. The KFC employees were shaken, but they hadn't seen much. They let my dad use the phone to call the police. I remember sitting in one of the booths, shaking, as an officer kneeled in front of me, asking questions. "Did you recognize them?" "No." "What kind of car was it?" "A van. Old. I think it was blue." I remember my dad pacing, his fists clenched, his breathing heavy. I had never seen him that angry before. I never found out if they caught them. The police took our statements, but as far as I know, they were never arrested, and we never went back to that KFC again. For years after, every time I saw a van idling near a parking lot, my stomach twisted. Even now, as an adult, I get a weird feeling when I pass by a KFC at night. That night changed me. I learned that monsters don't just exist in stories. They walk into restaurants. They smile at children. They pretend to be friendly before dragging you toward a door you were never supposed to go through. And sometimes they almost succeed. If my dad had been even a few seconds slower, I wouldn't be here to tell this story. It was the summer after my junior year of high school, and my older brother Daniel had just graduated. He had been accepted into a few colleges down south, so our family planned a road trip to visit them. It wasn't exactly a trip I was excited about. I would have much rather stayed home and played video games with my friends, but my parents insisted that this was a family experience. We lived in Indiana, and our route had us driving through Kentucky, Tennessee, and Georgia before finally reaching Florida, where Daniel's top choice, a private university, was located. The first 2 days of the trip were uneventful. Just miles and miles of highways, pit stops at random gas stations, and my dad's awful taste in old-school rock blaring from the speakers. By the third night, we were deep into Tennessee, somewhere between Nashville and Chattanooga. It was already past 11 p.m., and we were exhausted. My mom had been napping in the front seat for the last hour. My brother was passed out in the middle row, and I was sitting in the back, earbuds in, scrolling through my phone, trying to fight off sleep. That's when my dad muttered, "Damn, we're low on gas." I glanced up from my phone. The highway was mostly empty except for the occasional truck speeding past. The fuel gauge was teetering close to empty, and my dad started scanning the exits for a gas station. "There's got to be one coming up," he mumbled, rubbing his tired eyes. Sure enough, a sign appeared. "Exit 212, food, gas, lodging." A couple of logos were listed, and I caught a glimpse of a KFC logo. "Let's stop there." "I could eat," I said. Dad took the exit, and as soon as we turned onto the local road, the atmosphere changed. It was dark. Too dark. The kind of dark that made it hard to see more than 100 feet ahead. The streetlights were few and far between, flickering weakly against the empty road. Everything around us looked off. The buildings seemed older, abandoned in some places. Some businesses had their signs missing letters, making them look like something out of a horror movie. The only cars we saw were either parked on the side of the road or driving unusually slow, their headlights dim. "Where the hell are we?" my dad muttered. The GPS directed us a little further into the town, and eventually, we pulled up to a KFC with a gas station attached to it. It was one of those older-style setups where the fast food place was connected to a convenience store. The neon lights buzzed loudly, and the drive-through menu had a few missing letters. We parked near the gas pumps, and my dad turned off the engine. "I'm gonna fill up. Marcus, go inside and grab me a coffee," Dad said, tossing me a few bills. I hesitated. Something about this place felt wrong, but I shook it off and nodded. "All right." As I stepped out of the SUV, the humidity hit me immediately. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. I pulled my hoodie over my head and walked towards the KFC's entrance, pushing the door open. The first thing I noticed was the silence. No music, no kitchen sounds, just an unsettling stillness. There was only one employee behind the counter, a skinny, pale-looking guy in his mid-20s. He looked half asleep, leaning on the counter with an empty stare. I stepped up hesitantly. Hey, can I get a coffee?" The guy didn't respond right away. He blinked slowly, then finally said, "Coffee's in the gas station part. We only do food here." I nodded, glancing around. There were only 2 customers sitting inside, a man in a dark jacket and sunglasses sitting in the corner, and another guy at a table near the bathroom, staring at his food without touching it. Both of them felt off. I turned to leave, but just as I did, the guy in the corner shifted in his seat. His sunglasses reflected the flickering light above, but I could feel his eyes locked onto me. I swallowed hard and walked towards the gas station side of the building. The gas station's convenience store was just as unsettling. Shelves half empty, aisles dimly lit, a weird smell lingering in the air, like a mix of old grease and something metallic. I found the coffee station near the back, quickly poured a cup, and grabbed a bottled water for myself. Then, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I looked up at the convex mirror hanging in the corner and saw the guy from the KFC corner seat. He was in the aisle behind me, just standing there. His head tilted slightly as if watching me through his sunglasses. I grabbed my stuff and started walking toward the counter when I noticed another man, also wearing sunglasses, standing near the fridge section. That made 3. I reached the counter and placed my items down. The cashier, an older woman with tired eyes, barely glanced up as she rang me up. As I paid, I took a quick look around. The 3 men were now standing closer. One near the chips aisle, one near the door, one right by the coffee station where I had been. I forced myself to stay calm. Grabbing my stuff, I made my way to the exit, trying to act normal. As I stepped outside, I looked toward our SUV. My dad was still at the pump, scrolling on his phone, oblivious. My brother and mom were still asleep inside. Then, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. 2 more men, also wearing sunglasses, walking toward our car. My heart started pounding. I quickened my pace, gripping the coffee tightly in one hand. I was about halfway to the SUV when I risked a glance back. The 3 men from inside had stepped out as well. The 2 near the SUV were only about 10 feet away from my dad. I ran. "Dad, go! Now!" My dad looked up, startled. "What?" "Go! Get in the car! Now!" By now, all 5 men were moving fast, closing in on us. Realizing something was wrong, my dad jumped into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. I barely managed to climb into the back before he threw the car into drive. As we sped out of the lot, I saw the 5 men standing there watching us. No yelling, no chasing, just watching. We didn't stop for another 2 hours. That night, after we got to our hotel, I told my dad everything. He was shaken but didn't want to scare my mom or brother. We never found out who those men were, why they were watching us, or what would have happened if we had stayed even a few minutes longer. But I'll never forget the way they moved, almost too calm, too deliberate. And the sunglasses at night. I still wonder if they were even human. I never expected that night to stick with me the way it did. Hell, I never even thought much about that KFC before. It was just a random stop, a place I'd been to a handful of times when I needed a quick bite. But after that night, I never set foot in there again. It happened about 4 years ago. My friend Brandon was coming back from a trip, and I had agreed to pick him up from the airport. I had dropped him off when he left, so it only made sense that I'd be the one to pick him up. We had been tight since high school, and I probably wouldn't have done it for anyone else, but Brandon wasn't just anyone. Plus, he tossed me a little cash for the trouble, so I didn't mind too much. His flight got delayed by an hour, which meant I had to sit in the car scrolling through my phone, trying not to fall asleep. By the time he finally landed and got his bags, it was almost 1 a.m. We exchanged a few jokes on the ride back, and after dropping him off at his place, I started heading home. It wasn't until I was halfway there that I noticed my gas tank was almost empty. I sighed, knowing I had to stop somewhere. I pulled into the first gas station I saw, a KFC with a 24-hour gas station attached to it. It wasn't my first choice, but it was the only one open, and I didn't want to risk running out of gas in the middle of the road. I parked at the pump, stepped out, and swiped my card. The place looked deserted. Not a single other car was at the pumps, and inside, I could barely see anyone behind the counter. Just the glow of the old fluorescent lights flickering inside. As I stood there filling up the tank, I felt the familiar pressure in my stomach. I needed to use the restroom. Bad. Once the pump clicked off, I put the nozzle back and locked my car. The glass doors of the KFC convenience store slid open as I stepped inside. It was dead silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerators. I glanced around. The place felt off, like I had walked into a space that wasn't meant for me. An older man, probably in his late 50s, was behind the counter. He barely looked up as I passed him. I made my way toward the back where the restrooms were. The door creaked as I pushed it open. The light inside buzzed harshly, flickering every few seconds. I hurried, not wanting to spend more time in there than necessary. As I washed my hands, everything went black. The whole building lost power. I froze. The hum of the refrigerators, the buzzing lights, even the distant sound of an overhead fan. It all stopped. I stood there for a second, my breath caught in my throat. My first thought was a power outage, but I hadn't seen any lightning, hadn't heard any wind. Just moments ago, everything had been fine. I reached into my pocket to grab my phone. It wasn't there. Shit. I must have left it in my car. That wasn't unusual. I had a habit of letting it slip out of my pocket when I was driving. I felt my way toward the door, pushing it open and stepping back into the now completely dark KFC store. The only light came from the faint glow of the moon through the front windows. Shadows stretched across the floor, making everything look twisted and unfamiliar. Then I heard footsteps, not mine. They came from the next aisle over, slow, deliberate. I swallowed hard and tried to sound normal. "Power's out, huh?" I said, trying to fill the silence. No response. I cleared my throat and took another step. "Anyone else here?" Still nothing. I glanced toward the counter. The old man who had been standing there was gone. Something about that made my skin crawl. I turned toward the front door, deciding I'd just leave. Whatever was going on in here, I didn't want any part of it. Then, out of nowhere, a hand grabbed my arm. Hard. I didn't even get the chance to react before I was yanked backward. I lost my balance and hit the floor, my elbow slamming against the hard tile. Panic exploded in my chest. Someone was dragging me. I thrashed, kicking out wildly, my foot connecting with something solid. I heard a grunt, a low, pained sound, but I still couldn't see anything. I scrambled to my feet, bolting toward where I thought the door was. But in the pitch black, I misjudged my path and slammed into something, a display rack. It crashed to the ground, sending snacks and bottles flying. Behind me, heavy footsteps closed in. I felt another hand grab me, this time at my wrist, trying to yank me back. I didn't think, I just reacted. I swung my arm with everything I had, twisting my body and kicking backward. My heel connected with something, someone's leg. A deep voice cursed in pain. That was my chance. I broke free and sprinted toward the front door, shoving it open with my shoulder. As soon as I stepped outside, I realized the entire gas station's lights were out too. I didn't stop. I ran straight to my car, yanking the door handle. The second I got in, I locked the doors and started the engine. My hands were shaking. My breath came in quick, sharp gasps. I was about to speed off when I felt something tug at my back passenger door handle. Then, a loud bang against the car. I didn't look back. I slammed my foot on the gas and tore out of the parking lot, my tires screeching against the pavement. As I sped down the road, I glanced at my rearview mirror. Nobody followed me. By the time I got home, I was still shaking. I locked my doors, double-checked my windows, and sat on my couch trying to calm down. I never went back to that KFC again. But every time I passed it on the highway, I felt that same unease settle in my chest. What the hell had happened that night? And who the hell had been in there with me? I never expected a simple stop at KFC to turn into the most terrifying night of my life. It's one of those nights that stays with you, burned into your memory. Every time I pass a drive-thru late at night, I get that uneasy feeling, like something is just waiting in the shadows, watching. It happened last year on an ordinary weeknight. I had just finished running some errands, groceries, a quick stop at a store to grab a few things, and I was heading home. It was probably around 9 p.m., not too late, but late enough that the streets were mostly empty. I hadn't eaten all day, and as I was driving past the KFC near the shopping plaza, I got that craving, the kind where nothing else will do. A crispy chicken sandwich, fries, maybe a drink. Simple. Quick. I pulled into the drive-thru, the parking lot almost completely deserted except for a few employee cars tucked in the back. The neon glow of the sign hummed faintly in the night, the warm red and white colors reflecting on the damp pavement. As I rolled up to the menu board, I lowered my window, waiting for the voice to come through the speaker. But nothing came. I sat there, tapping my fingers against the steering wheel, waiting. Still nothing. I glanced around. The inside lights were on, the kitchen area visible through the windows, but there wasn't a single customer or worker in sight. "Hello?" I finally said out loud. No response. I waited another few seconds before leaning out my window, looking for any sign of movement inside. The parking lot was still deserted, the lot behind the restaurant completely dark. It felt off. Then I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. A large truck, probably an old Chevy or Ford, pulled into the drive-thru behind me. The engine rumbled loudly, the glare of the headlights blinding through my mirrors. I checked my phone, trying to Google if the KFC was still open. Maybe they had closed early. Maybe the speaker was broken. As I was searching, a sudden loud honk from the truck behind me made me jump in my seat. I glanced up at my mirror, squinting into the lights. The driver was impatient, clearly frustrated. I sighed and was about to just pull forward and leave when I heard it. A car door opening. And then, the unmistakable sound of boots hitting pavement. I turned my head to the left, and before I could process what was happening, a man was already standing at my window. He had long, unkempt hair and a scruffy beard. His clothes looked dirty, like he had been wearing them for days. His eyes, glazed over, unfocused, dark, stared straight into mine. "Hey, you gonna move or what?" he barked. I blinked, caught off guard. I don't think they're open," I said, keeping my voice even. "Nobody's answering the speaker." The man took a deep breath, then let out an exasperated laugh, shaking his head. "Bullshit. You're just sitting here on your phone wasting time." Something in his tone shifted, from annoyed to angry. "You think this is funny?" he snapped. "Think it's funny to just sit there holding up the damn line?" I raised a hand, trying to keep things calm. "I'm serious, man. They're closed." He tilted his head, his mouth twitching into an eerie half-smile. "You're lying." A pit formed in my stomach. This wasn't normal. Something was wrong with him. I had two options, argue or leave. I chose the second. "All right, man. Whatever," I muttered, and put my car into drive, pulling out of the drive-thru lane. As I pulled past the main parking lot, I caught sight of the man in my mirror. He had turned back to his truck, muttering something to himself. But as I turned onto the road, I saw his headlights flip on. He was following me. At first, I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence, that maybe he was just leaving too. But then, the truck sped up, closing the distance between us. The next thing I knew, his high beams flashed, and he laid on his horn, tailgating me aggressively. I was driving a small sedan, barely more than a few years old. He was in a massive lifted truck, a beast of a machine that could easily total my car if he wanted to. And that's exactly what he tried to do. We passed the main shopping center, the buildings thinning out into a more rural stretch of road. No gas stations, no stoplights, just a long, dark road with nothing but trees on either side. That's when he swerved into the opposite lane, speeding up beside me. I looked over. His window was rolled down and he was yelling something at me. Then, he veered toward my car. I swerved just in time, my tires skidding as I barely avoided his truck slamming into my side. My heart pounded. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I couldn't outrun him. His truck was too powerful. I needed a way out. Then I saw it, a sharp turn coming up. I hit the brakes hard, letting my car slow just enough before yanking the wheel and taking the curve. But the truck kept going straight and went off the road. I stopped my car on the side of the road, breathing heavily, watching as the truck skidded into a ditch, tires spinning uselessly in the mud. The driver's door flew open and I saw the man stumble out, raging, cursing, slamming his fists against the hood of his truck. I didn't wait. I stepped on the gas and took off. I drove straight to the nearest police station. They took my report, but I never found out if they caught him. The officers told me I was lucky. The guys like him, especially when they're high or drunk, don't care about who they hurt. They said, if I hadn't reacted the way I did, I probably wouldn't be alive. Even now, I still think about that night. About how, if I had been slower, if I had argued longer, and if I had let my guard down for even a second, I might not have been able to tell this story. And every time I see a KFC drive-thru at night, I wonder, what if he's still out there? I never used to believe in ghosts. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd experienced something straight out of a horror movie while working at KFC, I would have laughed. But now, I don't laugh anymore. I've been working at KFC for about a year now, pulling mostly late shifts. The job's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. My usual shift starts at 4 p.m. and ends at 11 p.m., sometimes later if we have to stay behind to clean. That Thursday night felt like any other. I was working with my manager Jake, our drive-thru cashier Lisa, and another kitchen worker Brandon. We were in that weird in-between time, past dinner rush but too early to close. We weren't busy, just handling the occasional car in the drive-thru. The lobby had been dead for at least an hour. Most people just used the drive-thru late at night. And honestly, I preferred it that way. Less mess to clean up. At about 9:10 p.m., I was packing up a famous bowl when the front door chimed. I glanced up out of habit, expecting to see some late-night straggler. But when I looked at the entrance, no one was there. I frowned, leaning over the counter a little to get a better view. The lobby was empty. Weird. Maybe the wind had pushed the door open a little. Shaking it off, I went back to packing orders. Jake was bagging a family meal for the drive-thru, while Lisa handed out change to a customer at the window. The whole time, the restaurant stayed eerily quiet. Then, hey, I froze. There was a girl standing at the counter. I swear to God she hadn't been there a second ago. I had only looked away for maybe 2 seconds, but suddenly there she was. She looked about my age, early 20s, dark hair, bright eyes, pale skin. She was beautiful, honestly. Something about her threw me off, though. Not in a bad way, just different. Her expression was calm, almost too calm. I tried to shake the weird feeling and forced a polite smile. Hey, welcome to KFC. What can I get for you? She smiled back, tilting her head slightly. 2-piece meal, mac and cheese, large drink. I punched in her order. As I did, she leaned in just a little, watching me closely. You look good in that uniform. I hesitated. That was unexpected. Thanks, I said, chuckling awkwardly. No, really, she continued, her voice soft but confident. You're cute. My face heated up. I wasn't used to customers flirting with me, especially not someone as pretty as her. Appreciate it, I said, trying to keep my cool. I turned away to grab her food, feeling my heart race just a little. Maybe I was reading too much into it, but something about her was unsettling. I wasn't sure why. Once I packed up her meal, I placed the bag on the counter. Your order's ready. Silence. I looked up. She was gone. I blinked, scanning the restaurant. The lobby was still empty. The food sat untouched on the counter. I frowned. Where the hell did she go? I glanced toward the restrooms. Maybe she had stepped away before I called her order, but I hadn't heard her walk away. The KFC wasn't that big, and the floor was tiled. You could always hear footsteps. I stepped around the counter, peering into the dining area. Nothing. I called out again. "Your food's here." No answer. A chill crawled up my spine. Something about this wasn't right. I hesitated, then knocked on the women's restroom door. "Hey, your food's ready." Still nothing. I pushed the door open slightly, peeking inside. The lights were on, the stalls were open, completely empty. I swallowed. How the hell did she leave without the door making a sound? An hour passed. By the time we were locking up at 11 p.m., I had almost convinced myself I had imagined the whole thing. Maybe she had walked out and I just hadn't noticed. I went to the counter one last time, ready to throw out the untouched food. But when I got there, my breath caught in my throat. The drink was missing. The food was still in the bag, untouched. But the large drink? Gone. I looked around, my pulse hammering. My co-workers were all in the kitchen, finishing up their tasks. No one had been near the counter. So who took the drink? By the time I left the restaurant, I was exhausted. My 20-minute walk home felt longer than usual. The streets were empty. The only sounds were my footsteps and the occasional distant car. About 10 minutes into my walk, I got that familiar, unshakable feeling, like someone was watching me. I turned my head slightly, just enough to glance behind me, and then my blood ran cold. She was there, standing about 500 feet down the road, the same girl from the restaurant. My breath caught in my throat. She wasn't walking. She wasn't moving at all. Just standing there. I blinked, and she was gone. My stomach twisted. I spun around completely, scanning the street. Nowhere. No alleys, no side streets. Nowhere she could have gone that fast. A cold sweat broke out on my neck. Then, from just behind me, "You walk fast." I whipped around. No one was there. That was it. I ran. I ran the rest of the way home, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. When I reached my apartment, I fumbled with my keys, nearly dropping them before finally shoving the door open and locking it behind me. I stood there, chest heaving, hands shaking. For a long time, I didn't move. The next day at work, I pulled Jake aside. "Dude, something weird happened last night." I told him everything. The girl, the missing drink, seeing her on my way home. At first, he looked amused, like he thought I was messing with him. But as I described her, dark hair, bright eyes, pale skin, his face slowly drained of color. "Wait, what did you say she looked like?" I repeated it. His expression turned to something I couldn't quite place. Fear, disbelief, something else. "That sounds like Kaylee." I felt a chill. "Who's Kaylee?" He hesitated. "She used to work here. Died in a car accident a few months before you started." A heavy silence settled between us. "You're fucking with me." Jake shook his head. "I wish I was." I didn't know what to say. All I knew was, her order was never picked up, and somehow I didn't think it ever would be. I didn't think it. I never thought I'd end up working at a KFC, let alone the overnight shift. But life has a way of humbling you. After graduating college, I struggled to find a real job. The bills didn't stop coming just because I didn't have an income, so I took what I could get. A fast food gig wasn't glamorous, but it kept the lights on. I worked at a 24-hour KFC just off the highway, a place that was always packed during the day but eerily empty at night. I actually liked the solitude. The few customers who did show up were usually truckers or late-night workers grabbing a quick meal before heading home. Most of my shift was spent cleaning, restocking, and scrolling through my phone when things were slow. That night was like any other. It was around 2:30 a.m., and the store had been quiet for the past half hour. My coworker, Devin, had gone out back for a smoke break, leaving me alone at the front counter. I took the opportunity to do some cleaning, grabbing the mop and heading toward the soda station where someone had spilled a drink earlier. That's when I heard the door chime. I looked up from behind the soda machine, expecting to see a sleepy trucker or maybe a couple of teenagers looking for a late-night snack. But instead, I saw him, standing at the front counter, staring straight ahead. A man in a dark blue jacket, hands shoved into his pockets, and on his face, a clown mask. Something about the way he stood there stiff and silent sent a chill through me. It wasn't Halloween, and there was no reason for anyone to be wearing a mask like that. I hesitated for a second, gripping the mop handle a little tighter. My first instinct was to just go back to the counter like nothing was wrong. Maybe he was just some weirdo playing a prank. But then I noticed something. His right hand was deep in his pocket, like he was gripping something. A bad feeling crawled up my spine. I took a step toward the counter, clearing my throat. Can I help you?" The man tilted his head slightly, like he was sizing me up. For a moment, he didn't respond. Then, in a voice that was low but firm, he said, "Where's the money?" My stomach dropped. Was this really happening? I had worked here for a few months, and we had never been robbed before. Sure, customers got aggressive sometimes, but this was different. The way he spoke, calm and direct, told me this wasn't a joke. I took a small step back. "Look, man, I don't..." Before I could finish, he moved, quickly and with purpose. He walked around the counter like he owned the place. My body reacted before my brain did. I dropped the mop and ducked behind the nearest aisle, heart hammering in my chest. From my hiding spot, I heard him rummaging through the cash register, the sound of bills being shuffled, coins clinking. I needed to call the cops. I pulled my phone out, hands shaking, and quickly dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency?" Before I could say a word, the man's voice cut through the silence. "I know someone's here." I froze. He had stopped messing with the register. His voice was sharp, commanding. He knew I was hiding. "Come out," he said, his tone turning more aggressive. "Right now." I clamped my hand over my mouth, forcing myself to stay quiet. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I could hear his footsteps moving toward the aisles, slow and deliberate. I couldn't run. I'd have to pass right by him to get to the exit. I held my breath as he walked past the row I was crouched behind. My mind raced, trying to come up with a plan. Then suddenly, he stopped. Everything went silent. And then, the door chime. I waited, listening. The seconds stretched on. Had he left? Cautiously, I peeked around the corner, and my blood went cold. He was standing right outside the glass doors, staring in at me through the mask. For a split second, we locked eyes. Then slowly, he reached for the door handle. Panic kicked in. I turned and bolted toward the back, running through the kitchen. I could hear the door swing open. His footsteps pounded against the tile as he came inside again. "Come out, kid," he shouted, voice filled with frustration. I wasn't going to wait for him to find me. I grabbed the nearest object, a metal tray from the prep counter, and gripped it tightly, preparing to use it if I had to. His footsteps got closer. He was coming toward the kitchen. Then, another sound. A loud screech of tires outside. And then, sirens. I didn't dare move, but I heard him curse under his breath. Then, his footsteps turned, running back toward the front of the store. I peeked out in time to see him shoving the door open and sprinting toward a car parked near the curb. Red and blue lights flashed through the glass as a police cruiser pulled up, blocking the getaway car's path. I watched as two officers jumped out, guns drawn. "Hands up! Now!" The masked man hesitated for half a second, then made a stupid decision. He turned and ran, didn't get far. The officers tackled him to the pavement before he could even make it past the sidewalk. For the first time in what felt like hours, I let out a breath. By the time I stepped outside, my coworker Devin had returned, looking completely confused at the sight of the cops arresting the guy in the mask. "You good, man?" he asked, wide-eyed. I nodded, though my hands were still shaking. The police later told me that my 911 call had gone through, even though I hadn't spoken. Since I had dialed and left the line open, they traced the call to the store and sent officers just in case. If they had shown up a minute later, I don't know what would have happened. I worked a few more months at that KFC, but I never took another overnight shift. The quiet no longer felt peaceful. It felt dangerous. That masked man was caught, but I knew there were others like him out there. And next time, I might not be so lucky. As the police pinned the masked man to the ground, he didn't struggle. He didn't fight back. Instead, he started laughing. A low, unsettling chuckle, muffled by the pavement. I stood frozen near the entrance, still catching my breath, watching as the officers cuffed him. One of them asked him something, probably about his weapon, his name, or why he had done it. But the masked man ignored them. Instead, he slowly turned his head toward me. His dark eyes, barely visible behind the cracked mask, locked onto mine. And then, in a voice so calm it made my skin crawl, he said, "You think this is over?" A chill ran down my spine. The officer holding him down yanked him upright. "Shut up." The man didn't resist, he just kept staring at me as they shoved him into the back of the police car. Even as the door slammed shut, I could still feel his gaze burning into me. A cop approached me asking if I was okay, if I needed medical attention. I nodded, barely registering his words. Because something about the way that man spoke, the certainty in his voice. He wasn't done. I didn't stay at KFC much longer after that. But even now, months later, whenever I hear a door chime, I can't shake the feeling that one day I'll turn around and see that mask again.